Gunshots in the Philippine Senate, a senator caught on security camera running, literally running through the back corridors of the nation's highest legislative body, a warrant from the Hague, and a man who once said, "ICC, come and get me." Well, they came. Welcome to the channel. My name is Dan, and today we are diving into one of the most explosive, most complicated, and spiritually weighty stories coming out of the Philippines right now. The ICC arrest warrant against Senator Ronald Dela Rosa. And we are going to look at this not just through a political lens, but through a biblical one. Because here's what I want you to understand before we even start. This is not a story about the left or the right, about Marcos or Duterte, or even about international law versus national sovereignty. This is, at its core, a story about one of the oldest questions in human history. Can the powerful escape justice? Let's talk about it. Let me give you the facts, because facts matter. Let me be a good Berean here and make sure we're working from actual information, not social media noise. On May 11, 2026, the International Criminal Court confirmed and unsealed an arrest warrant against Senator Ronald Dela Rosa. The warrant itself had been issued in secret on November 6, 2025, meaning it existed for 6 months before the public even knew about it. The charge? Crimes against humanity, specifically murder. The ICC's pre-trial chamber found what it called reasonable grounds to believe that Dela Rosa was a co-perpetrator in the killing of at least 32 people between July 2016 and April 2018, the period when he served as chief of the Philippine National Police under Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs. Let's be clear about the scale of what we're talking about. Government figures acknowledge at least 6,252 people killed in anti-drug operations. Human rights groups put the actual toll at closer to 30,000, once you factor in vigilante-style killings. 30,000 people. That's not a statistic. That's a community. That's a city. That's fathers who never came home. Mothers shot in front of their children, sons labeled drug suspects, many of them poor, many of them with no due process, no trial, no legal defense. Dela Rosa was the man directing that operation from the top. So the ICC says you need to answer for this. And what did Dela Rosa do? He disappeared for 7 months. Then dramatically, he resurfaced on May 11, not to surrender, but to cast a Senate vote that ousted the existing Senate president and installed a Duterte-allied replacement. Within hours, NBI agents chased him through the Senate corridors. Video captured him running. A standoff began. Senators declared him under protective custody. Then, on the night of May 13th, gunshots rang out inside the Senate building. While authorities outside were trying to figure out what was happening, the same with media inside the Senate building. Senators were live streaming what they claim is an apparent attack. No casualties, but chaos. Absolute chaos. And at 2:30 in the morning on May 14th, Dela Rosa slipped out of the building under cover of darkness. He is now, as of this recording, officially listed by the ICC as at large. This is what's happening in the Philippines right now. Now, let me put on my pastoral hat for a moment, because I think it's really easy, really dangerously easy, to watch this story and react purely on emotion. Maybe you support Dela Rosa, maybe you despise him, maybe you're Filipino and this hits close to home. Maybe you're watching from the other side of the world. Wherever you're coming from, I want to anchor us in something that doesn't move. Romans 13:1-4 says this, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad." Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval, for he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. I want to be a responsible exegete here. There is a wrong way to read Romans 13, and it's been used to justify some of the worst abuses in history, to tell enslaved people to comply, to tell the oppressed to stay quiet. That is a misreading. Paul's point in this passage is not that governments are infallible. Paul himself was arrested, beaten, and eventually executed by a governing authority. He knew better. What Paul is affirming is the principle that God has built accountability structures into the fabric of human society. Governments, courts, justice systems, even imperfect ones, exist because God knows that power left completely unchecked destroys the vulnerable. And here's the part that should make every powerful person in every nation uncomfortable. The purpose of that sword, the purpose of justice, is specifically for wrongdoers, not for the poor, not for the powerless, for those who wielded authority and used it to harm. The ICC is not a perfect institution. No court built by human hands is. We can have legitimate debates about jurisdiction, about sovereignty, about process. Those are real conversations. But what we cannot debate, what the Bible does not allow us to debate, is whether accountability itself is valid. It is. God built it in. Here's where I want to push back a little, because if you're a Christian watching this, I think you have to grapple with a really uncomfortable question. What do we do when the powerful man is one of ours? What do we do when Dela Rosa's supporters wave Christian banners, when pastors stand behind him, when the language of faith gets wrapped around political protection? Because that has happened in the Philippines. It happens everywhere. I'll tell you what I think we do. I think we go back to the text, and we ask, does God ever give his people permission to use faith as a shield against accountability? And the answer from Genesis to Revelation is a thunderous no. Think about David, King David, the man after God's own heart, the author of Psalms, the slayer of Goliath. When he had Uriah killed to cover his sin with Bathsheba, God did not let it slide because David was anointed. God sent Nathan. God brought consequences. God made it plain. The sword will never depart from your house. Even the beloved are accountable. And look, I am not here to pronounce final judgment on Dela Rosa as a person. That is God's territory, not mine. But I am here to say this clearly. If thousands of poor Filipinos were killed, if even a fraction of what is alleged is true, then justice is not persecution. Justice is justice. The Bible actually has something specific to say about the killing of the poor in the name of authority. Proverbs 21:13 says, "Whoever closes his ear to the cry of the poor will himself call out and not be answered." And Proverbs 17:15, this one should stop us cold, says, "He who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the righteous are both alike an abomination to the Lord." Abomination. That's strong language. That's God saying, the perversion of justice, defending the guilty to protect the powerful, is one of the things I hate most. Christian brothers and sisters in the Philippines and everywhere watching, we have to be careful. We cannot let our political loyalties become idols that blind us to the cries of the people God is passionate about, the poor, the marginalized, those without a voice. There is a legitimate discussion to have about the ICC and Philippine sovereignty. I want to be fair here. The Philippines ratified the Rome Statute in 2011 and then withdrew from it in 2019 under Duterte. Specifically, many analysts say, because of this investigation. The ICC argues it retains jurisdiction because the crimes were allegedly committed while the Philippines was still a member state. That is their legal position, and it is widely supported in international law. Some senators are arguing the warrant is invalid without a local court's endorsement. Legal scholars, including Filipino ones, have called that argument flawed. Republic Act 9851, passed in 2009, actually requires the Philippine government to cooperate with international tribunals on exactly these kinds of charges. So the legal framework says, cooperate, turn him over. Here's the thing. I'm not naive about international politics. The ICC has been criticized, and sometimes fairly, for selective prosecution, for focusing disproportionately on the global south. Those are conversations worth having in academic and policy spaces. But, and this is a big but, the existence of imperfect enforcement does not nullify the principle. We do not get to say the system isn't perfect as a reason to let alleged mass murderers walk free. That logic would empty every prison on earth. Justice, even when imperfect, matters, especially to the victims. Let me zoom all the way out for a second. Here's what I believe with everything in me. God sees every person who was shot in a dark alleyway. He knows every name on every list marked drug suspect. He heard every prayer whispered by mothers waiting for sons who never came home. He saw it, he recorded it, and he does not forget. Psalm 9:9 says, "The Lord is a stronghold for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble." And Psalm 10:14, "But you do see, for you note mischief and vexation, that you may take it into your hands. To you the helpless commits himself. You have been the helper of the fatherless." God is not absent from Philippine history. He is not absent from this moment. The ICC warrant, the Senate standoff, the international attention, none of it happened in a vacuum. God in his sovereignty uses many instruments to pursue justice. Sometimes it's a prophet like Nathan. Sometimes it's a court in the Hague. And ultimately, even if every earthly court fails, even if political maneuvering succeeds in this life, there is a final account. Hebrews 4:13, "No creature is hidden from his sight, but all are naked and exposed to the eyes of him to whom we must give account." You can run from the NBI, you can slip out at 2:30 in the morning, you can hide behind Senate walls and Supreme Court petitions, but you cannot run from God. So what do we do with all of this? Pray. Pray for the Philippines. Pray for the victims' families. Pray for justice to run its course. Pray for leaders, all leaders, to fear God more than they fear courts. And be careful with your political heroes. Hold them to the same standard you would hold anyone else. The gospel does not have a VIP lane for the powerful. If this video made you think, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment. I genuinely want to know, how are you processing this as a Filipino Christian, as someone who loves the Philippines? Let's have that conversation. I'll see you in the next one. God bless.